Well, hello kids! Welcome back to our final Well Hello Wednesday together, and just before school's starting too. I'm your host, Dr. Chef Abbie, and I know that school's gonna be a little different this year. And it's gonna be different for me too. But I know that God's on our side, and whatever is impossible is gonna be made possible through Him. Now, I want to tell you guys a little story today, and it's a story about a man named Gideon. Now, you can find this story in the Bible in a book called Judges. And the story starts off when an angel sent from God comes down from heaven and meets Gideon and says, "God is with you, mighty warrior." And Gideon basically says, "But God abandoned us." And he says this right to the angel's face. But God is patient with Gideon, and he has an amazing plan for him. So God's plan for Gideon was that he needed to defeat an army called the Midianites. Now, the Midianites had a ton of people in their army. They'd taken over the land that Gideon was living in Israel, and they were ransacking their fields, stealing their food, things like that. It wasn't a really good time. But Gideon was very afraid because of how big their army was. So he asked God for 3 different signs to make sure that it was actually God telling him to do this. Now, fast forward the story a little bit, and Gideon has gotten an army together. He's got about 32,000 men. And I have a little visual for you guys, just 1 second here. So I have a little battle map of what's happening. So this is Gideon's army. All these blue pieces here represent about 1,000 men. So there's 32,000 men here. This yellow piece here is Gideon, and this white piece here is God. So Gideon has 32,000 men in his army, and that's a fair size. But then God tells Gideon, "You got too many people in your army. Tell anyone who's afraid to go home." And Gideon kind of gives God a look. Like, you know that look that your parents give you sometimes? Or sometimes you give that to your friends. But Gideon trusts God, and he tells the people that anyone who's afraid to go to war can go home. And 22,000 people go home. If I were in that army, I'd be one of those people. Now, only 10,000 people are left. And it's a good size. I mean, it's bigger than even the amount of kids that went to my school. But God tells Gideon again, "You still got too many people in your army." And Gideon gives him another look like, "Are you serious right now?" Gigantic army, 10,000 men. So he does what God asks him, and God tells him to send the men over to a nearby stream and drink from the water. And depending on how they drank the water would tell who could stay and who had to leave. So the people go over and they drink from the stream, and some of them pick it up and put it in their hands and they drink out of their hands. Some kneel down and drink right from the stream. And God says anyone who picked up the water, they can stay. So only 300 men were allowed to stay. So let's say these green pieces each represent 100 people. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the Midianites, I didn't say how many there were because it actually doesn't say how many there were. So I'm making a rough estimate in my head, but there's about this many men. That's a lot of people. That's the Midianite army, and that's terrifying, to say the least. And Gideon would be afraid. I would be afraid. But Gideon trusts God, and at night, he makes a plan. He tells his army to split into 3 groups, and they're gonna surround the ridge of the valley. So this part right here is the valley. These are all the Midianite tents, and then they're gonna surround it right here. So we'll put our men out here. So Gideon gets his men to divide into 3 groups. So he has a plan, he divides them into 3 groups. So they surround the ridge here, and this is the valley here where all the Midianites are staying. He says, "On my signal, we're all gonna raise our torches and blow our trumpets." So Gideon said, "When I raise my torch and I blow my trumpet, everyone else do the same thing." And everyone joins in. So there's just a bunch of lights on the top of the ridge, some trumpet noises. And if they're anything like mine, not really that scary. But God strikes fear into all the Midianites, and they all start running away, fearing for their lives, because God made them afraid. you saw the entire Midianite army, and they probably could take over the world. There was a lot of them. But because God was on Gideon's side, God wasn't on the Midianite side, he was on Gideon's side. So Gideon and his army won the battle. But it wasn't Gideon and his army who won, it was God who won the victory for them. Now I know that this school year is gonna be difficult. You guys are gonna have to wear masks when you're walking through your school. Some of the high school students, I heard, they get a day in school, then they have to do it online the next day, and they go back to school, and there's a chance that they won't be able to see their friends at all. That's tough, and maybe even a little scary. But God's on our side. He has a plan, and he makes what's impossible possible. And all we have to do is trust in him and believe that whatever he has for us is good for us, because God is good. Now, I'm gonna pray over you guys for this week and for the school year. So let's fold our hands and close our eyes and talk to God. Dear God, thank you for today. Thank you that you are amazing, that you are powerful, that you have a plan for us. You have a plan for our good, even when sometimes we don't see what it is. I pray for everyone watching this, the kids that are watching this, the parents, family, friends, that they would learn to trust you, that they would obey you, and that they would know, Lord, that you have a plan for them. And even during these scary and tough times, Lord, you are the one who is in control. In your name, amen. Now, we're gonna move on to our activity today. So I'm gonna move on over to the kitchen. What we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be making edible finger paints. I did this back when I was in elementary school. I went to something called a Science Olympics, which is just a nerdy way of saying a science fair. And our teacher taught us this recipe. So I'm gonna show it to you guys. So let's go on over to the kitchen and do it. Welcome to the kitchen, guys. So today what we're gonna be doing is making edible food paints, like I said earlier. What you're gonna need for materials is you're gonna need some water. I have it in this pot right here. You're gonna need some cornstarch, some sugar, some food dye, it's optional, and some drink crystals or flavor crystals or Kool-Aid powder packets. So what you're gonna need to do first is you're gonna need to follow the directions on your flavor crystals or drink crystals or whatever you have there. This one says to have 3 cups of water, so I have 3 cups of water here. First, what we're gonna do is we're gonna add our cornstarch to our water. For every cup of water you have, you need a 1/4 cup of cornstarch. So I have 3 cups of water in here because that's what the directions say on my drink crystals packet. I'm gonna have 3/4 of a cup of cornstarch in it. So that's 3/4 of a cup of cornstarch. So once you got your cornstarch in there, you're also gonna wanna add in some sugar. So it's 1.5 tablespoons per cup of water. So I have 4.5 tablespoons in this little jar here. So I'm just gonna add it in like that. And then you're gonna whisk it together, and then you're gonna put it over medium heat over on the stove. So the cornstarch will be tough, but it'll mix in properly. So once you got it whisked, you can put it over on the stove. So you're gonna wanna have an adult do this, and have them put it over medium heat until it's thick. Once it's all thickened, kind of like what it looks like right here, what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna put it onto different plates or bowls so that you can start mixing some dyes in. I only have the 1 package of flavoring crystals, so I'm just gonna put it into the pot before I put them into their own dishes. But if you have multiple types of packaging and flavors, you wanna separate them first. So I got that all mixed in there. So now I'm gonna put this into my different plates here, and then I'm gonna give them some dye. I know it's a little orange here, but that's okay. So let's spread that out a little bit here. So now what we can do is, depending on how many colors you wanna make, you can put them in as many or as little dishes, bowls, whatever you wanna call them that you want. So next up is the food dye. So I'm gonna have the same colors that the dishes are in already. So there's gonna be blue, green, pink, and then this one's gonna stay yellowish orange. So once you got the dyes in there, then you can just mix them together so they'll have the right color in them. So that's all of these mixed up. Had a little bit of taste testing. They're gonna be a little warm, so make sure that they're cool before you start dipping your fingers into them. So we're just gonna wait a little bit and let them cool. So now that they've cooled down a little bit, they started to flatten out. It's time to start painting. So I hope you guys enjoyed making these edible food paints with me. I'm gonna do a little bit of drawing after here, and I hope you're looking forward to your school year. I know it's not what you guys expected, and it's not what I expected either, But God's got a plan for us, so we're gonna trust Him, we're gonna obey Him, and He's got our best interest in mind. I hope you all had a wonderful summer with me, and if you see me around, say hello. That's all from me, so I hope you guys enjoy painting. You guys have a wonderful school year. Farewell!